Hi, this is Darius at Retail Tech Podcast over at Shoptalk 2016. I'm here with Dirk Hoerig at commercetools, which has a very interesting new commerce platform. Dirk, thank you so much for giving me this time. And why don't you just do a quick introduction of who you are and what commercetools does?
Sure. Thanks, Darius, for taking the time and for the interview. So commercetools is an enterprise e-commerce platform provider, and what we do is we provide our technology on a cloud infrastructure as a platform as a service model. That means commercetools is more a framework than a shop templating system, and that means we provide all the commerce functionalities like product information management, customer management, order management, cart management, marketing toolings, and so on, with an API. And on top of that, we provide developer toolings and customer toolings to build omni-channel experiences. So our customers can build global international web stores on top of the platform, as well as native applications, in-store experiences, connected with car navigation systems, build Internet of Things toolings, button commerce, I would call these kind of things, which became quite prominent due to the Amazon Dash button. So you can do all these kind of things on top of the platform as we separate the user experience and the functionality with an API.
Okay, so would you say that that's the main distinguishing factor, is that you are basically an API first platform as opposed to native, big software development and things like that, but you're focusing really from a microservices or API aspect?
At least to some degree. So the API first part is important, but maybe we need to take a step back and look at the whole picture. So what we have seen, and that was in 2010. So we started commercetools in 2006, focusing on cloud e-commerce or cloud-based enterprise e-commerce software. But we had a monolithic application at the first years when we started. And we figured out over the time that the retailers and brands that we are working with are becoming, on the one hand, more technical to compete with fast changing requirements in the market. And are also relying, of course, on agencies and integrators. And there had been a few things that we looked at. And the one was most of the platforms out there are not developer friendly enough, which means if you are an integrator or a customer and you want to jump onto a commerce platform, you have a very long onboarding curve and experience curve that to some end can be frustrating. And our idea was, okay, why can't a commerce platform be learned to use for a technical person in maximum a week? So our goal was that every developer in the market, no matter if they have a PHP background, Java background, .NET, or more on the native applications like iOS and so on, can work with our commerce platform and create great user experiences within a week of onboarding maximum, as easy as possible. But so that would give us a scaling effect and lower the cost of investments for the merchants. The second thing that we have seen is that the whole market already in 2010 shifted to mobile. And there was a very great article in the Wired magazine, I think it was end of 2010, when I visited a few customers over here in the US with the headline, "The web is dead, long live the internet." And that actually described the idea that we had at that time so well, because when we look at e-commerce platforms, the years before, they had been built for desktop applications. And if we look at the market today, 2016, we have about 80% of the internet traffic is not coming from desktops. So if I would be a retailer, I would question myself, why should I buy myself a desktop-focused commerce platform, while 80% of my business and more to come is not generated through the desktop. So we said, okay, we need to make a separation. So this whole API thing, though it's a technical one, the only reason for that is, or to have something like that, that you need to separate the channels and the user interfaces from your core commerce functionality. Because if you load that down, that's all the same. So you have to deal with complex product data, with complex pricing structures, with independent customer requests, personalization, order management, and so on. And it doesn't matter where this is happening and in which device and in which user interface, but this is all core. And with being API first, we separate that. And maybe one last thing to that, being API first doesn't mean that we are API only. So we are full stack enterprise commerce platforms. We have SDKs, we have front-end toolings, we have integrations to various ERP systems, we have back-end toolings or user interfaces for the business user, so category managers, e-commerce managers, and so on. We just see it more as an onion principle and make sure that the different layers are separated from each other and that you can consume these services individually. So, and that they are not depending on each other. And that's the strong USP.
That's the key. I think that's the, I don't know if I can call it the holy grail, but I mean, the future that I envision myself from my limited knowledge, definitely not as much as yours, but is where you would be able to go and pick and choose what services you want and plug them in. And it really should be that simple, even for non-technical people, if the software is evolved to that point. And the other point is that you mentioned API is a technical word now. I really think it needs to be a business word for retailers. They really need to focus on the API model because it will make their life so much easier if their system is transitioned to that. So now, e-commerce and omni-channel or online and offline. We've been hearing a lot about the store is not dead. A lot of people say the store is dead. What are your thoughts as far as how things are progressing, and where do you see yourself going into that equation in the let's 3 to 5 years?
I would say this is customer specific and market specific. So I neither think that the store is dead or that online or e-commerce pure play is eating it all. It depends on the industry, it depends on the products, and it depends on the customer positioning. What I definitely see happening in the market, even though it's happening from my perspective too slow, is the CIOs of the merchants need to become more technical. It's not enough to understand the ERP system, understand the business processes, being able to maintain and update their in-store applications and systems. They really need to be able on a technical level to understand the digital processes of the commerce world and being able not only to talk APIs, but understand APIs. So if we just look back for the last 2 to 3 years, mobile almost is eating it all, no matter, and even in the retail world. So what we see is that about 80% of the customers that make a purchase in a store, so I'm not talking about groceries, but fashion, electronics, and so on, use their mobile phone or their smartphone within the store and gathering product information and so on. Some of them even place a transaction at a competitor at that time. So we have the digital transformation happened through the consumer. So no matter if I want to keep up as a brand or a retailer or not, this is happening anyway. So if I want to be able to react to customer requirements that fast, so we have devices coming out almost every half a year that are creating a change on the, let's say, customer behavior or user experience story. We see great things like Amazon Echo. The team that created Siri is now working on a even more improved, let's say, artificial intelligence technology that should ease up our life, which is new user interfaces. So at the end, it all comes down to customer convenience. And this customer convenience due to new technologies is changing so fast that I need to be able to keep up. No matter if I'm an online retailer, online pure play company, or a brick and mortar retailer, I need to be able to adapt those changes. And in the last years, often we have seen customers looking for features, you have all the experience, Darius, from doing the implementations, selecting softwares, managing the projects. Often RFPs too much look into features, but features today don't count anymore from our perspective. So much to be able to compete long term, as the only thing that is for sure or that is certain is change, and this change is happening faster and faster and faster. And if I want to be able to keep up, I need to develop. It's a very unattractive word that I'm saying now. I know that customers don't like it so much, but I need to develop a technical architecture that is future proven and that can keep up with that. Feature becomes a commodity. So, and if I don't invest into architecture, and if I don't understand what target architecture I need to have, then I probably will stay ahead, or not stay ahead, while others that have more technical knowledge inside and already did that probably might be running in front of me.
Right. Technology is definitely a competitive advantage, just as like product selection, or location of a store used to be. It is a competitive advantage, and that technology really has to be ubiquitous to the user. The shopper just wants to use their cell phone, and they don't care what happens in the back end. They just don't want to go home and get on their computer and have to go through all of that again. And so I think that's it. So when you look at going through the process of helping customers sign up and transition, how does a customer typically, from your experience on the commercetools platform, how does that work? I mean, it's one thing to, even from a customer point of view, say, yes, this is a great idea, I want to do it. And it's another thing to actually do it. So what is that transition process in your experience for store owners?
There's not one answer, but probably three, because I see three types of customers coming to our platform. The small to medium-sized ones that are not that technical yet, but would like to invest into a technology that is more future-proven and open to other channels. They build directly on top of our SDKs and the API individual storefronts. And what they do is they combine it often with, let's say, a best-of-breed model. So they integrate CMS systems or experience management systems that they think is great, analytical tools and so on, and try to create the best experience for their customer that they can have, and gain a little bit of technical knowledge at first, but still build a, I would say, kind of semi-monolithic application on top of the APIs, but know that later on when they want to expand, they can increase their architecture to other services. Then we have the second type of customer, which is already a medium to large enterprise organization, but not having that a high amount of developers in-house. So they rely a lot on integrators. And they often come to us and say, okay, we're coming from the monolithic application world, and we see in the long term a microservice architecture as our goal. But for us, this is not black and white or kind of big bang approach. We want to grow there over time, and we want to gain knowledge, and we want to work with our partners onto that. And then they come up, okay, how can we cut out the first services still and do some kind of hybrid application out of that, where say, okay, product information management, maybe cart calculation, ordering, we want to have that as services. Some other applications can be a little bit more monolithic. And what we do is we give them consulting support. So our solution architects help them and their integrators on finding the right architecture and creating a process, but we also offer them optionally support throughout the way. Because what our goal is, and we're a partner-driven company, but long-term we see most of our customers being successful if they have enough technical competence in-house. And as you said, so the technology is becoming a differentiator. It's not the only differentiator. Of course, you need to be great in marketing. That's probably the most important thing. You need to understand your consumers, and this is what values most. But technology is a part of that, and we want them to not have the kind of thinking, okay, we need to outsource our shop because it's just a shop. This will not work nowadays anymore. So we help them to face information or technical information knowledge and programming skills into their company over time. And then we have the third type of customer, which is still where we were, but we have those, which is large enterprise organizations that had been through all of gained all these experiences over the last 10 years and implemented monolithic applications, maybe have self-developed shop solutions and so on, and now say, okay, for now the third generation of our e-commerce architecture, we build microservices, then they create digital labs for digital transformation internally, hire hundreds of developers. And these clients we also work with, and they build microservice applications directly on top of our platform. But these architectures often contain 100 to 200 microservices, which has also challenges because you need to be able to orchestrate them, to manage them, and so on. And that comes with a specific requirement on size, on an organizational structure that you need to have and that you need to support. And therefore, we see these three. Okay. And it's more an evolution in the market, and not everybody that's coming to us and says, okay, microservices are great, but how can we start now? Is a great fit for microservices and APIs, because if you have very little requirement or functional requirements for your commerce application with less complexity, targeting that with a microservice architecture would be too much, and then also you would be too high in cost, too long a project. So there you can probably a more monolithic application is actually better. But what we see, if you have high complexity, multiple touch points, and fast-changing requirements from your consumers and business models that you need to roll out quickly and that you want to play around and probably throw away and come up with other ones, then you are actually long-term faster and maybe even also cheaper with the microservice architecture, because it gives you the agility to be able to act that way.
Well, I think, that's a really good point at the end there. Anybody that is not thinking that way is in danger of not being in business, unfortunately, in retail, because the world is changing from under our feet. So you got to be agile and you have to really think about that. So, and this is one of the nice things that I see is that a lot of companies are really innovating. Like Shopify, what they're doing, I'm happy to see what they're doing from this, going from the e-commerce only into, adding the POS and going into things. And there are definitely other companies that do it. So this is, the market is so big, and the individual needs of retailers is so varied that I think this innovation is really going to turn out good for all of us.
Oh yeah, definitely Shopify. I see many going the path that we went through. So saying, okay, we gained a lot of experience in the last years with our platforms, but now we need to be more flexible and provide more features. There are more and more commerce APIs coming out, and API first models. So this is important. So just having every commerce platform can have an API, but if it's getting on top of the monolithic application, this will never work out. But probably this would be a podcast on its own. Why architectural wise this can't work. But what we also see, so we are here at the Shoptalk event, which is having a great lineup of speakers and companies and a lot of retailers and brands, and not all of them, but many of them are innovating and created digital labs, reinvented the wheel internally. And no matter if you call it microservices or being API-centric, customer-centric, and so on, almost all of them share the same topics and are going into the same direction. And this is, at the end, this is good for the consumer because she's driving that. So, and that's a reason for all of us trying, okay, how can we adapt technologies to the demands of the consumer? And the demands obviously are changing. I think we will have some exciting years in front of us.
Yeah, so what do you think about the wearable market and, or the wearable technologies that are coming out, especially like the watch, Apple Watch? Is that something that you've looked at all, or?
Oh, definitely. So we look at wearables and IoT in general all the time. We also have a bunch of customers that use that. On the typical wearables or let's say watch sides, I don't see so many real business cases. So I see fun cases or interesting cases just for playing around with these kind of things. But it's still relying very strong on the smartphone, and the watch is just giving it a different UI. So I think over the next 2 to 3 years, this whole Internet of Things thing and wearables and other technologies will, at least to some degree, already disrupt the smartphone market. Because why? And I like what Amazon is doing with Echo. It's obvious, and I think retailers, other retailers will keep up with that and come up with own ideas that are better fitting for them. Is why should I, for example, navigate on a small screen through a product catalog if I just can tell any kind of digital assistant, hey, look at that, I like this product, please figure out where can I get it for the cheapest price just around the corner, or where can I get it shipped within the same day, and then let the computer do the rest of that, and I don't need to get through boring checkout processes, enter my address again, and all these kind of things. Mm-hmm. You can automate that, and with improved machine learning and algorithms and smart toolings, I think we'll see a lot of innovation there, not only on the watches and wristbands, also from the glasses direction. So I believe strongly that augmented reality will have a huge change on everything that we do. So I'm not talking so much about virtual reality, which is great, but augmented reality. I think that augmented shopping, maybe not in 2 years or 3 years. We have Google Glass examples and so on, which are fun, but it's not a tool that everybody of us is using, and that's so usable. But once these technologies get easier, and once you have it in your contacts and these kind of things, and they get smarter and faster, I don't need any kind of screen or device in my hand anymore. And definitely this will also, that will have an impact on everything, but for sure, therefore also on commerce.
Right, and voice as well as chat, SMS and chat type of commerce is also.
And we see a lot of startups in that area that integrate into WhatsApp, into Facebook Messenger, and so on to directly figure out what products we are talking about, creating offers out of that, being able to buy straight out of a WhatsApp chat and these kind of things. And it's getting more and more integrated. And so shopping is more a process of ourselves that we can closely be integrated, and where we don't need an external device and say, okay, now I jump into a shopping process and select something. So I think it becomes more intuitive over time. And this is what when we look back the last 10 years, maybe that's sad, this is what is happening. So if we check out how was commerce in 10 years ago, which is not so, that was 2006, so it feels like yesterday. We haven't even talked about responsive sites. So this whole responsive design thing came up with the iPhone around 2010, which is not so long ago. And now everybody's looking into native apps, into Apple Watch apps, integrating their digital shopping window. We talk a lot about beacons and all these kind of things. And all that happened within 6 years, which is just a very short amount of time. Yeah, it's amazing. And if we just try to adapt that for the next 6 years and assume that we will have that kind of speed and innovation, keep up with that, or maybe it will even accelerate, then I think, smartphone maybe might get less relevant, and other devices, wearables, voice, and integrations to other toolings might play a significant role.
Right. So great points. The other thing that brings to my attention is that the fact that this change is happening at such a speed makes the API model even more relevant and more needed, because again, making and keeping up with these changes is a lot simpler if you have an API enabled platform or ecosystem in your company, as opposed to if you're working on a monolith system. So the other thing that I wanted to just also point back to is the whole concept of microservices and API. And I had a really great talk with Kelly Gage and what he's doing over at the Oracle on microservices. It's really more of even an organizational change and not just technology. So I think that's something else that also I'm sure you've learned yourself.
Oh, definitely. So at the end, it's all about organization, because the organization defines the architecture, more or less. This is what everybody that's getting into microservices is learning. And if you have the opportunity, what we're currently seeing is that the organizational setup of the teams at companies that are successful in implementing microservices is defined by the architecture. So they define their microservice architecture first and then think, okay, how do our teams have to look like? How do we handle communication and knowledge exchange and all these kind of things to not fall back into any kind of monolithic approach in a top-down model. So this is quite important. And also challenging because it requires a lot of new skills where there is just, I would say, still very little knowledge around. Of course, there are companies like Netflix and so on sharing a lot of great information out there, but each organization or each company needs to adapt that at least to some degree on an individual level. So you can't just copy something that works for somebody else. So you might need to adapt a little bit. And the most challenging part that I see in there as well is recruiting, because we are all looking for the same skills, no matter if we as a software vendor, our partners as integrators and agencies, and our customers, as they are becoming more digital, we are all having the same kind of requirements on DevOps knowledge, on agile development methodologies, the Scrum processes, on team coaches, and so on. And well, there's a huge job market coming up. It's already out there. I think everybody is having at least double as many jobs open as they currently find applicants for. But this is one of the challenging parts that we see.
Yeah, that's also another great topic, which we can definitely do at least one episode on that itself. I mean, it's like retraining people that are coming from different industries that are being disrupted. Even, in retail, I look at, all the different changes. And I mean, there is definitely a great pool of potential people that can be trained. But so that's going to be one of the challenges that is going to come up. So, well, we're coming up on time. Just quickly, what are your goals for the next 12 months as far as how you want to grow commercetools and what you'd like to see both in Europe and other countries and the US?
So for the next 12 months, on the one hand, it's becoming or establishing our presence over here in the US. We started opening our US office in New York about 9 to 10 months ago, and we have a strong focus on the US market with a very strong commitment from the whole company. We're currently a little more than 100 people in total, of course, most of them in Europe, in Munich and Berlin, and we are currently growing the team over here in the US and also setting up development offices and all these kind of things. So this is very important for us. We're getting great customer feedback and rolling out currently more and more customers on our platform. Overall, so if we not look so market specific, is we try to stay ahead on the curve. So our focus always is first on the product and second on the marketing. And I think we made a good move and also have been quite lucky on the timing with our API and microservice approach. But now we want to go further. So we think that, as you said, the APIs, everybody sooner or later has to use APIs or stick to API commerce platforms, which will mean API might become a commodity. So, and we don't want to wait until everybody is serving APIs. So we say, okay, what's now the next thing? So we're already providing container development frameworks so that our customers and partners can easily just deploy their Docker containers and these kind of things. So we're improving that and making it even easier for them to run their microservices and architectures on top of our platform. And now we think, okay, how can we come up with more smart algorithms in our platform. So to understand what our customers are doing and giving them automatic recommendations how they can improve in their environment. So talking there about predictive analytics, machine learning, and these kind of things that will come into the platform, where we'll probably launch some great features next year. And yeah, that's what we're up to.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. I wanted to. We'll have more information in the on the website on how to contact Dirk and look at commercetools. Also, just one point. I mentioned Kelly at Oracle. I want to say that Kelly is part of a team. There is a really good team of really highly professional people working actually on this service. But yeah, he's the person that I've actually contacted with. So. We look forward to seeing more and more from commercetools, and best of luck to you.
Thanks a lot, and also thanks for the interview.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode and would really appreciate rating us on Stitcher or iTunes. Also, make sure you subscribe to our newsletter at retailtechpodcast.com to be notified of new episodes, updates, and special announcements.